Welcome to the Michigan Football Junkies. I'm Jeremy Miller, and today we're going to go over a combination, just a little bit of the recap of the UConn game, as well as an interview with Sam Oshtry from Testudo Times. He's going to help us preview the Maryland-Michigan game coming up this Saturday, our first real test. So first with UConn, we knew it wasn't going to be a tight game with all the injuries they have. It was pretty evident that we were going to be able to run away with this. I would like to see it without the injuries to see what type of game that would have been. I do think it would have been a better game. Do I think it would have been a tight game? No. But I think they would have definitely put up a better fight. I could see just quarterback play being more consistent and so forth. Michigan side, I thought JJ looked really good. He was very accurate with a lot of his passes. He's a little off here and there. You saw Ronnie have to go down and get one for a first down. You saw he actually, if he would have led Ronnie on a crossing route in the first half, Ronnie might have got another 10, 15 yards in run after the catch. But he slowed down for it. Ball hit him, and you hear the announcers, "Oh, right, hit Ronnie right in the number." Like he had no choice but to catch it. Well, Ronnie actually had to slow down for it to hit him in the numbers. I mean, JJ still is making phenomenal reads. He's making very quick, deliberate decisions. It's just different with him out there. It's like he gets the ball out faster. The ball obviously is getting out of, from the quarterback's hand to the receiver definitely faster with him than with Cade. But it just seems like he's making the decisions faster as well. I mean, how many times have you seen Cade throw a screen pass and then there's defenders all over it? And then you're watching JJ do it and it's free and clear. There's some different things there that he can get better at, like that read. It was on a third down play. It's a counter read option. The defensive end crashes down. He's looking JJ right in his eye. I can understand why he pulled the ball, but he definitely should have given the ball to Blake. He was more likely to gain positive yardage. We're probably not picking up that first down anyway. So it doesn't really matter, but in the grand scheme of things, you want him to make the correct read every time because later on, that may be the difference between a first down or not. So that's one of those things. I thought Cade looked slow with his decision-making process. I don't think he's dealing with the loss of the starting job well. That's just my guess. I just don't think he looks that good. He doesn't look as good as he did last year. Obviously, he's hurt now. He's going to be out for a couple weeks with an ankle injury. Davis Warren, I thought he looked pretty good, solid. He's more athletic than people think he is. I think we have something there with Alex Orji, though. Now, besides the fact of RG3 saying there's an orgy in the end zone, you have to give it to him. Like, nice work, RG3. But maybe no. This goes along with a few other comments he's made this year. Michael Penix Jr. said there's big Penix energy. Also dropped a premature snapulation. Yeah, I can see him getting really, really popular as an announcer, as an analyst. I can also see the networks going, okay, hey, come on. You got to stop. But I think we have something there with Alex Orji. He is a physical specimen. He's such a great runner. And I know he hasn't thrown the ball a lot, but just in the little bit he has thrown the ball, I like what I'm seeing from him. It just looks cleaner now. Blake Corum, as far as running the ball, He was the first man out there. Donovan Edwards was out for this game, but Blake looked really good. He obviously tied a Michigan scoring record, which, man, it's been so long since that happened. Oh, wait, it just happened in the last regular season game of the year last year with Hassan Haskins. 5 touchdowns from Blake Corum. He looked really good. CJ Stokes, he's going to be a guy. He's a guy. On to the receivers. Ronnie Bell led everybody 7 catches for 96 yards. Roman Wilson, he had a couple plays that looked really good. He catches the ball, he gets up to speed so fast. Roman is underrated. AJ Henney, it seemed like they made an effort to get him the ball. He had 4 catches for 37 yards. He also had one carry for 3 yards. He had a punt return for a touchdown. So this whole team really kicked in today with the defense. I'm going to hit on a couple guys here that has really impressed me over the first 3 games. Chris Jenkins, right up front, he's really impressed me. He's getting off his blocks. He's been putting pressure on. He's made a number of run stops. Michael Barrett is a backup linebacker. I thought he's played really well. Jalen Harrell, he has been all over the field. Junior Colson is not getting the recognition he deserves because he looks so good out there right now. But the guy that I think has impressed me more than anybody else is Mike Sanderstill. I mean, he looks like a veteran defensive back. He is all over the place. He's making solid tackles. He's super physical. He's step for step with the wide receiver whenever they do throw the ball to him. I mean, everything you want in a slot corner, and that is Mike Sanderstill. I mean, where would he be right now if he played DB the entire time he's been at Michigan? I mean, I think you'd be talking about a first round pick, hands down. Let's kick it over to the upcoming game for week 4 against Maryland. Next up, we have Sam Oshtry from Testudo Times, testudotimes.com, as well as the podcast. Welcome on.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. We this is our first real test for Michigan this year. Going against Maryland, and you guys have really been building something down there. Mike Locksley came in from Alabama. Tell me about what you've seen in the changes since Mike Locksley has got there, because I think there's a significant difference in the whole culture as a whole, just from the outside. But obviously, you're going to be way more in depth on it than I am.
There absolutely is. It's been a complete culture shift. And look, when he took over, he was hired in December of 2018. And when he took over, it was a controversy riddled, just the program was in complete disarray. It was following the death of Jordan McNair on the practice field, and a ton of controversy, tragic death, and a ton of controversy followed that. So the program was in a really difficult spot. They hadn't been good in years, and they need to hire the right guy to kind of make a complete culture shift. And that's exactly what Loxley's done now in his 4th year at the helm. And it really starts with the recruiting, because he's a really a player's coach that can really walk into a living room and relate to a family, relate to players. And he's done a great job recruiting some of the best players in the DMV area, which Maryland likes to focus on, but really in the entire country to come play for him. And that's where it starts. And yeah, I mean, last year they're coming off a bowl appearance for the first time since 2016 and a bowl win in over 10 years. So there absolutely has been a huge culture shift. And look, Loxley always talks about, he knows everyone wants him to close the gap between Maryland and the top teams in the Big Ten East, like Michigan. And but he always talks about how it starts with his own program and building a culture, having recruiting, attracting the best players, and eventually that gap will close.
You know what? I think he's actually built a really nice staff. Starting with Dan Enos as far as the offensive coordinator, and am I right? Mike Miller is the co-coordinator.
No, he's the tight ends coach, but he does a lot with offensive game planning and all that. Dan Enos is the sole offensive coordinator, but Mike Miller's technically the tight ends coach, but he has a high role in that offense.
Well, it seems like Mike Locksley has brought in coaches that are kind of a mixture where you have some coaches that are really good recruiters and others that are more of the game planning, more of the technical side, but at least a mix of all of them. I heard Mike Miller is one of the best recruiters and as far as assistant coaches in the Big Ten. And then Dan Enos, I think he's done some phenomenal things as far as offensively, with the game plan and how much you guys go on the offensive attack against other teams. Tell me a little bit about what you've seen, what you like about what they do, or what Dan does rather.
Yeah, Danny No started last year, and really the main thing was developing a relationship with Talia Tagovailoa, the starting quarterback, obviously. And look, last year, their first year together, as Danny No is the play caller, and Talia under center, Talia had a record-breaking year. He took a huge jump from his first year in 2020 to last year, second year in 2021. And a lot of that was because of the play calling, like Danny knows, just letting Talia do what he does, working with him on his decision making, just always being present for him. Talia speaks really highly of Dan Enos. And, I think Dan Enos is a very experienced guy. He has a lot of coaching roles. He knows offenses, he knows schemes, he knows game plans. And so I think he's done a good job of kind of bringing along Talia and really the entire offense. And now he's in his second year here as it continues to progress. But the coaching staff as a whole, a lot of Loxley comes over from Alabama, obviously as an assistant. He was a head coach years back at New Mexico State, but or New Mexico rather, excuse me. But he most recently he was an offensive coordinator for Nick Saban at Alabama, and a lot of the coaching staff has experience on the Alabama coaching staff. So when you're learning from the best, from the program that everyone looks up to the most in Alabama, and you have those guys that have been in that culture, and then they come over here to try to not mimic it necessarily, but build something of its own, it really helps.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what everything we've always seen in the NFL. You see something work and people take it and they're like, "Hey, we can do that. That's what works." So,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's the highest form of flattery when it comes to supports, but when you also have coaches in that culture, they're in that system and they're like, this really works, and then they kind of put their own spin on it. And that's where you really see things really come together. And I think I've always been a big NFL draft, breaking down players, really watch for who's going to be that guy going to the next level. So I've
Mhm.
watched Talia, and I'm very impressed with him. I think that he's a better runner than his brother was. I think he has kind of a different arm. Like he can just, I think he goes at it in so many different angles and levels compared to what Tua does.
Yeah.
Tua is so much more conservative.
Yeah, no, I agree on the NFL level. But I don't think Talia is quite the prospect that Tua was.
No.
I just think Tua was way more accurate, better decision maker. And Talia has a ways to go. I mean, who knows if he'll come back next year? He does have a year of eligibility, but this year is very big for him in terms of getting onto draft boards and turning some heads with NFL scouts. He does have a ways to go with that because when you look at the top competition that he's played, the top defenses in the country in college, those aren't his best games. He puts up monstrous numbers against some weaker defenses and weaker opponents, and he has an amazing arm. He obviously can use his legs and escape the pocket as well. But it's really a question mark of what he's going to do against some of the top teams in the country. And his first real test this weekend, this year is this weekend against Michigan.
Yeah, and you know what? He has a lot of help because I think Maryland has always recruited some unbelievable athletes. Just
Mhm.
their physical ability, I think, is phenomenal. And starting with guys like Raheem Garrett, I really think he's a guy that's going to play in the NFL. I think Jay Jones shows a lot of athletic ability. I mean, you see him where he can just juke somebody out and not let them touch him. But
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the best receiving cores in the entire country, probably, certainly in the Big Ten. And people joke that it's Maryland's become wide receiver U, but they really have. I mean, for really years now, they've just attracted the top wide receiver talents for whatever reason, and Loxley's done a big part of that. but it's Dante Demas Jr., who could have probably would have left for the NFL draft last year, but he tore his ACL against Iowa last season, so came back. Excuse me, came back for this season. But he's an NFL graded guy. You said it, Rakim Jarrett. He's going to be phenomenal in the NFL. He's probably the highest graded prospect on the team. And then you have Jacob Copeland, the Florida transfer, who had a great year at Florida last year and has already been productive for Maryland. And then Deshaun Jones. They have four receivers who are likely going to be NFL, not necessarily stars, but real guys on in receiving cores in the NFL. So it's really impressive. So when you look at Talia and just the plethora of weapons that he has at his disposal, it really makes his job a lot easier. But these guys are playmakers. I mean, Maryland loves to have big plays and make big plays, and when you have the arm Talia has, and you have the weapons that he has on the outside, it makes their job easier.
Now, who is the starter at tight end? Because I've seen a lot of is it Deitches?
It is. It's Corey Dyches, but CJ Dupree is the backup tight end. But they really both play a lot. They like to go two tight end sets a lot of the time. And CJ, excuse me, Corey Dyches is a former wide receiver, and he moved over to tight end. So he's a great pass catcher. Just last night, he had 6 catches against SMU, including a touchdown. But it is Corey Dyches. But they like to go two tight end sets, and CJ Dupree still plays a lot as well.
That throw that Talia made to Deitches, where he had a defender right in his face,
Yep.
and he kind of reaches around and almost sidearms it around the defender. I was like, okay, that is outside the box, and 99% of quarterbacks out there can't make that throw.
Yeah, that was a really impressive play for a touchdown last night, like right around the goal line. There was also another time that it was a 4th and 9 situation, and Maryland desperately needed to get that 4th down, and they went for it on 4th and 9, and it was like an 8-yard dart. Talia threw to Corey Dyches, and he had to really reach over, and he had like two guys trying to tackle him, but he kind of like bullied those guys over to pick for that extra yard to pick up that 1st down.
You have some weapons there at wide receiver, but you also have some pretty good weapons in the backfield. Roman Hemby has kind of came on pretty strong this year, but there's one guy that I just love, and no offense, but I really hope he gets upset with Mike Loxley and transfers to Michigan, and that's Antoine Littleton.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know why I love that dude so much, but how big is he? Please tell me what is his size?
Yeah, I mean he's a big guy. Like he is their goal line back. I couldn't tell you exact metrics right now, but he's their goal line back. You have a 4th and 1, you have a 2nd and goal situation. They're handing it off to him, and he's been their goal line back, and that's why he's been able to have a few touchdowns this year. He had one last night too. But Roman Hemby is has been the guy in the backfield. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of inconsistency and really just question marks because of inexperience coming into this season in terms of the backfield. But Roman Hemby, he got the number 1 job because of a great training camp and a great spring camp, and he's just made the most of his opportunity. He's been phenomenal. Last night he had 16 rushing attempts for 151 yards and a touchdown. But he's also been effective in the passing game. Like he had 4 catches for 62 yards last night. And Loxley praises him as a blocker as well. So he really does everything. He's been the guy that he's their RB1, no question about it. And he's dynamic. He's capable of picking up 3 or 4 yards when you need it, but he's also capable of exploding for a 50+ yard rush. And Antoine Littleton, to have him too as another redshirt freshman, as the goal line back, as those maybe a 3rd down back more. It's really helpful that Maryland actually has a rushing attack because this is a pass heavy offense and everyone expected that because of the quarterback, because of the wide receiver weapons we just talked about. But when Maryland can rely on the rushing game like it has been able to so far this season, I mean, this offense, when it's clicking on all phases, really the sky is the limit for it.
Yeah, and Hemby, I've seen numerous big plays out of him. So he does seem to be like he could just take it to the house at any point.
Yeah, no, he absolutely can, and he did that in the first game of the year against Buffalo, and it was like, whoa, like this guy's arrived on the scene. And last night he had a big 50-yard rush, and if he broke one more guy, would have been going for a touchdown, but he got tackled, but he got a 50-yard rush, and just last night he averaged over 9 yards a carry. So I mean, he is explosive ability. He's a strong guy, and he's only a redshirt freshman, which is really good sign for Maryland.
And he runs tough too. He's not just a speed guy because I really saw he was, he even turned around, kept going. He was just like, no, I'm gonna get every yard I can out of this. He seems to be a really tough guy. Um,
Absolutely, yeah. He's really tough, and yeah, there's not a lot that phases him, and he's shown that.
this is where I think where some of Talia's problems have really came into play, like last year, that he just got too much pressure in his face. Tell me, how's this offensive line? How have they improved from last year?
Yeah, Loxley all offseason was calling it the most improved position group on the team, and that a lot of that is because they have a ton of experienced guys. Jalen Duncan, Spencer Anderson. Those are two NFL graded guys who should get drafted this year. And you have Mason Lunsford. You just have you had all five returning starters from last year. So you really looked at this group. You're like, okay, this group should make the next jump. And I think in the run game, they're much better. Run protection offensive line than they are pass protection. But I really do think they've improved and made the next jump. The next thing for them is really discipline because they just get too many penalties, whether it's false start, holding, whatever it is. A lot of those penalties come back on the offensive linemen. It's just that's really the thing they need to clean up. And when you talk about a veteran group, and you really would expect them to be more disciplined, but they really haven't been so far. They certainly have made a jump. I mean, they're definitely better. They'll break down in pass protection sometimes, but Talia is very good at escaping the pocket. But they really have made a jump as a more improved position group and one that you can rely on.
And that does seem like it's a weakness since they do lead the Big Ten in penalties.
Yeah,
Um,
they were second in the Big Ten last year in penalties, and now they have 31 penalties through 3 games, which is just impossible to imagine. They had 15 last night. It's really remarkable that they pulled out a victory after having 15 penalties in a game that gave up 141 yards.
and that's something I think a lot of people don't realize how much that actually hurts a team to get penalty after penalty, and where all of a sudden you go from second and 7 to now second and 12. That's a huge difference, and people don't realize how big of an aspect of the game that really is.
Yeah, and it's if it was just second downs, maybe it would be more manageable. But a lot of them are on third and short and fourth and short opportunities. They had a 4th and 1 in the game yesterday at a crucial spot in the third quarter, and they were planning on going for it. Boom, false start, 4th and 6. You got to punt. It's like these short down yardage situation where they're getting penalties. It's just a lack of discipline, and it's going back to last season. So if Maryland doesn't clean it up soon, they're really going to struggle because you can afford it against maybe some lesser opponents. And SMU is a very good team, but you obviously could afford it then. If you have 15 penalties or even 10 penalties or even 8 penalties against a Michigan State, Penn State, any of these teams, you're getting blown out of there.
Yeah, SMU they got a heck of a passing attack. Mordecai, good Lord, he had a heck of a game, didn't he?
Yep, absolutely.
So over to your defense. So your defensive coordinator, now that's Brian Williams. Tell me a little bit about what Brian Williams brings in because he's kind of worked his way up, correct?
Absolutely. He's been in the program for a long time and kind of didn't get maybe the respect that he deserved from the outside. But you talk about recruiting, being able to bring the best guys in, especially local talent. He's a phenomenal recruiter as well by all accounts. But so he was the co-defensive coordinator last year. Wasn't the sole play caller on defense, but the last game of the regular season, they made it so Brian Williams would be the sole defensive coordinator and the sole defensive play caller. And Rutgers, they beat that game. They won that game in the last game of the season. And then they had a phenomenal game against Virginia Tech in that bowl game in the Pinstripe Bowl. So going into this season, Loxley named Brian Williams the sole defensive coordinator, and he's done a solid job so far. This defense, um, they've had their ups and downs. That it's their weakness is the pass rush. They don't get to the quarterback as much as I think they would like. But last night against SMU, I mean, the numbers look like, yeah, Tanner Mordecai had a great game. The numbers look like they were phenomenal. They had 520 total yards of offense, but at the same time, they they only allowed SMU to score 7 points in the second half. And this is a really good SMU offense, like you said. Obviously, Rashee Rice, the SMU wide receiver, he went off. He had 11 catches for 193 yards, which is a phenomenal day. But overall, they made timely stops and timely turnovers. And Brian Williams, he's done a good job. Players respect him, and he has the defense on the right track. They have a lot of work to do, but it's certainly on the right track.
Well, just looking through the history, since the year prior to Mike Locksley taking over, it looks like they have went up in sacks every single year, if not, at least the number, if not in ranking in the Big Ten, according to, because when you have 2020 and you only play a few games, obviously that throws the numbers off, but they moved up in not only rank or as total number of sacks every single season. So they're doing something right there.
Yeah, definitely. And that's they love to put pressure on the quarterback because it relieves some pressure off the secondary. So they try to. Sometimes they struggle with, but they've had some good pass rushes in the past, and so they're certainly improving. There's no doubt about that. And Brian Williams, I think is the guy that can kind of take them to that next step where they want to get.
So tell me a little bit about like your defense as far as like the guys that are going to be putting on pressure, your defensive line, your edge rushers. Tell me a little bit about them.
Yeah, so I mean, the guys who try to put pressure. I mean, it starts with Greg China Rose, who he had a sack last night, a couple tackles. He's one of the main guys rushing up there. Ami Finau, he's a defensive lineman that does a good job of kind of putting pressure on the quarterback. He likes to do that as well. Ruben Hippolyte is probably the leader of that front seven, and he's a linebacker. He actually went down with an injury early in yesterday's game and did not return. We're not exactly sure his status for this week or moving forward. We'll probably find that out in a couple of days here. But he's probably one of the leaders of that defense, especially that front seven as a linebacker. And then you have Jay Sean Barham, who was a highly ranked prospect coming in, and it was between South Carolina and Maryland. It was a whole thing, and he ended up committing to Maryland. And as a freshman so far, he's been phenomenal. Just last night, he had 12 tackles, 6 solo, half a sack. He's been really good at putting pressure on the opposing offensive line and getting to the quarterback. But I would really say the strength of the defense is the secondary. You talk about Jacoby Bennett, who last year led all Power 5 in pass breakups with 16. Just this year, in the first game this year against Buffalo, he had 5 pass breakups. So he's really a guy that he is great in coverage. He wants to make those pass breakups into interceptions. He doesn't intercept the ball as much as he would like to, and some of those are because of him, because of drops. But he's the lead cornerback, and then you have Tarheeb Still, who was questionable going into he played a little bit. It was a finger injury. He should be good against Michigan 100%. He's a phenomenal DB as well. And then you have the safety group, which there was, again, a lot of question marks coming into this year, but they've really stepped up, maybe been the most surprising group, certainly on the defense, but maybe in the entire team. And it starts with Bo Brady, who last night had 15 tackles, 7 of his own. He had an interception and a forced fumble and 2 pass breakups last night. So he was phenomenal all over. And then you have Dante Trader, who had an interception as well last night. So it's really been the safety group that's been the most surprising and most impressive so far.
Wow. Yeah, I looked at Bo Brady's numbers, and he had a phenomenal game yesterday, but I haven't been able to watch as much Maryland football as you have, and you do a phenomenal job being able to break it all down. And obviously, you're the expert for many reasons. One, you seem like a lifelong Maryland football fan, but then now you're the editor of the Testudo Times. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Managing editor of Testudo Times, and then the editors also are on the beat, full-time beat for football and men's basketball. So those are my 2 beats as well.
Oh, so you got a lot of hats.
Yeah, it's a busy time.
Well, tell us where we can find you, and as far as all different aspects, as far as Twitter, do you have a YouTube channel? I know you have your website and your podcast. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Sostry, Sostry. I post all my work, all my podcasts, updates, news, whatever it is. You can follow all my work there on Twitter, and then you can subscribe to the Testudo Times podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And also, if you check testudotimes.com for the leading coverage of Maryland athletics, and specifically Maryland football and basketball, all my work and everyone else's work would be there as well.
That sounds phenomenal. We appreciate it so much. You were great. You get a lot of info to know who we're going to be playing this week because we know it's Maryland, but we really don't know the ins and outs like you do. So it's phenomenal to have somebody come on and really break down the team, tell us a little bit more about what we're going to be seeing. It's great to be